जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजना। यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजना। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी। यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजना। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधवा कुंज विहारी। 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 जय कृष्ण रुक्मिणी जय सत्यभामा। कृष्ण रुक्मिणी जय सत्यभामा। भामा कृष्ण रुक्मिणी जय सत्यभामा। जय दामोदरा जय दामोदरा। दामोदरा जय दामोदरा। जय दामोदरा जय दामोदरा। दामोदरा जय दामोदरा। जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 प्रभुपाद। जय विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्री श्रीमद डिवाइन ग्रेस विश्व गुरु ऐसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शैल प्रभुपाद की जय। Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajaka Acharya Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Shri Krishna Rukmani Satyabhama Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26, verse number 35 and 36. Nabhasaha Shabda Tanmatrat. Nabhasa Shabda Tanmatrat. Nabhasaha Shabda Tanmatrat. Kala Gatya Vikurvataha. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparshaha Abhavat Tataha Vayuhu. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayus. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayus. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha. Nabhasa Shabda Tanmatrat. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayus. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha. Nabhasaha Shabda Tanmatrat. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayus. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha.
Nabhasa Shabda Tanmatrat. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayuhu. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha.
Nabhasa Shabda Tanmatrat. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparsho Bhavat Tato Vayuhu. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha.
Nabhasa Shabda Tanmatra. Kalagatya Vikurvataha. Sparsho Bhavatto Vayus. Tvak Sparshasya Cha Sangraha.
Nabhasaha from ether. Shabda Tanmatrat, which evolves from the subtle element sound. Kalagatya, under the impulse of time. Vikurvataha, undergoing transformation. Sparshaha, the subtle element touch. Abhavat, evolved. Tataha, dense. Vayuhu, air. Tvak, the sense of touch. Sparshasya, of touch. Cha, and. Sangraha, perception. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. From ethereal existence which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time. and thus the subtle element touch, and thence the air and sense of touch become prominent. Kindly repeat. From ethereal existence, which evolves from sound, the next transformation takes place under the impulse of time, and thus the subtle element touch, and thence the air and sense of touch become prominent. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the course of time, when the subtle forms are transformed into gross forms, they become the objects of touch. The objects of touch and the tactile sense also develop after this evolution in time. Sound is the first sense object to exhibit material existence, and from the perception of sound, touch perception evolves, and from touch perception, the perception of sight. That is the way of gradual evolution of our perceptive objects. Since the purport is short and more technical, we'll read the next verse also. I'll read this by myself. Mridutvam katinatvam cha shaityam mushnatvam cha etat sparshasya sparshatvam tanmatratvam navasvataha. Translation. Softness and hardness and cold and heat are the distinguishing attributes of touch, which is characterized as a subtle form of air. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Tangibility is the proof of form. In actuality, objects are perceived in two different ways. They are either soft or hard, cold or hot, etc. This tangible action of the tactile sense is the result of the evolution of air, which is produced from the sky. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Jnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mokam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam. Long ago, this is a true incident. Near Kurukshetra, there was a forest region where there was a group of dacoits, plunderers. Their profession used to be to loot people whoever would be passing by, murder them, kill them, take away their possessions. Very, you can say, very ruthless dacoits. Had one chief, the leader of the dacoits. So this leader of the dacoits, he was married, but he did not have children. So he was thinking how to get a son, so that there will be somebody successor who can take over the dacoit gang and take his profession forward. So he tried in various ways, but he was not able to beget a son. So he asked his, although they were dacoits, generally olden times, if you'll see, dacoits were all devotees of Kali. So to worship Kali, naturally they have to have a priest. So amongst the dacoits, there was one guy who was designated as a chief priest. So he called the priest. And priest means he's not really a priest in the sense that he was a brahmana, well learned in scriptures and all, nothing like that. One of the guys, he, somehow came to be known as a priest, and they were doing their own concocted way of worshipping Kali. Not anything authentic or something like that. But in their group, he was known to be a priest. So he called him and asked him, see, I want a son, so what do we do? What should I do? By the blessings of Kali, if I can get a son, it will be very good. So this man, this priest, he recommended, if you get for Kali, they do all these kinds of animal sacrifice, sacrificing goats and all that. So he said, you have to appease Kali. So Kali, if you appease, then if she blesses, you can have a son. So you have to offer her something special. Anyway, we are always offering animals, goats and all those kind of stuff. So something special you have to offer. So this man, the dacoit asked, what should we offer? So this chief priest told him, you have to get a man animal, meaning you have to get a human being who is a dull fellow, mentally not very intelligent kind of fellow, who has a human form but is more like an animal. So a man animal. Some people are like that, very dull, very, they will only be able to do some menial works. They will not be able to do any intellectual works, those kind of people. So he said, you get one person like that, and we'll offer man animal to Kali. It will be a special offering, and she'll be pleased, and you'll get a son. So the dacoit immediately told his followers, get one man animal. So they went around, searched, found one guy who doesn't understand anything. And they got him, and they brought him to their hideout, whatever was there in the jungle. And they were preparing to sacrifice him. But no matter how dull a man is, anybody, human being means, not only human being, any animal means if they come to know that they are going to be killed, they'll run away, right? They'll try to protect themselves. So this man, although he was a dull fellow, still, some basic intelligence will be there. So he understood these people are going to kill me. Somehow he managed and escaped in the middle of the night. So when he escaped, immediately all the dacoits got, this, man meant for sacrifice, he has run away. Now if the dacoit king comes to know, what will happen? So they went and told the dacoit king. The dacoit king said, no, at any cost you have to get him. Go and get him. So the entire dacoit gang ran out and started chasing where this man has gone. They were chasing, and it's in the middle of the night. Somewhere he went and hid. They were not able to find him. Now what to do? They are not able to get the sacrificial man animal. So while searching in the middle of the night, they found one agricultural field. And in the middle of the field, there was one machan kind of thing somebody had built. And they had kept one person like a night watchman, because agricultural fields in the night, sometimes these wild animals, wild pigs, deer and all will come and eat all the agricultural produce. So somebody had kept that person to do night duty as a night watchman. So this man was sitting there warding off all the deer and all that. And the dacoits came across this man, and they saw this man was really well built, hefty and all that. And when they spoke to him, they could make out he was very dull, not understanding anything, not speaking anything, just sitting like that. Actually, because this man was very dull. And because he was very dull, his brothers had him just be a night watchman for the fields. So these dacoits thought, anyway, original man is gone, we cannot find him. This man also looks like to be a man animal, let us take him. So they caught him and they took him to their hideout. And because this man is dull, he is not objecting, they told, come, he went. So they took him and brought him before the dacoit leader and told him, see, that man ran away, but we found another person, don't worry. So the dacoit leader was happy. Okay, anyway, the sacrifice will go on time. So naturally, morning came. Then, according to the rituals, this man animal, he was bathed nicely, given fresh clothes, then given sumptuous food to eat. He has to be happy, made him happy in every respect. Then put tika and all those kind of things, and then took him to the sacrificial arena. So in the sacrificial arena, there was one big deity of Kali. You know how Kali is, with skulls and all that, and black and fearsome, with fierce teeth and all kinds of weapons in her hands and all that. And then immediately this chief priest came, all these assistants all came, and they started chanting some mantras and all that. And then they took out the knife, the chopper, which was used for beheading. And he got ready to chop the head off this man. So until this time it was okay. What these people did not know was that this man whom they had caught and brought, he was not an ordinary man. In his previous life, he had been a deer. Now you know who it is. And the life previous to that, he had been the king of the whole world. He had been Bharat Maharaj. And he had left his kingdom, all his opulent life, everything. And he had become a sannyasi, retired to the forest, executed devotional life, rose to the stage of Bhava Bhakti. And then he got attached to a deer, and then he gave up his devotional practices, because of which he had to take birth as a deer. But although he took birth as a deer, he did not forget his past life. And so, in that life, as a deer, he repented why he had fallen victim to becoming attached to a deer. And so somehow he passed that life, and next life he got the birth as the son of a Brahmana. Actually, that Brahmana had 2 wives. And from the first wife, he had 9 sons. And the younger wife, he had twins, 1 son and 1 daughter, twins. And that son was Jadabharata. So when he took birth as Jadabharata, he was called Jadabharata because he was totally acting like a Jada, like a dumb person. So as Jadabharata, Bharat Maharaj could remember previous life as a king, previous life as a deer. So this time he did not want to take any. So externally, he was exactly acting like a totally dumb and dull man who did not understand anything, who could not carry out anything. So internally, he was constantly meditating upon Krishna. So when these dacoits saw him, they thought he's a dull fellow, let us go and sacrifice him. That's how they brought him before Kali. But the moment Kali saw that they are going to kill Jadabharata and Bharat devotee, so she could not tolerate. Immediately, she burst open the deity of Kali burst open, and Kali herself jumped out of it. And her Vikrala Rupa, her fearsome form, all full blackish and all teeth protruding and hair all scattered and garland of skulls and carrying different weapons in her hands and brilliantly effulgent, so much so that you cannot even look at her, so bright. She jumped out from that deity, snatched that chopper from that priest's hand and chopped off the tree's head itself. And the moment the head was chopped off, blood started coming out of that beheaded body, and she was drinking that and screaming, and all the dacoits were shaking with fear. And she did not stop at that. She went on a killing spree. Left, right and center, beheaded all the dacoits. Not one of them left. Everybody beheaded. And then Kali didn't come alone. Along with her all her bhutas, pretas, all her followers also came. So for them, this is a wonderful situation, festival it is. So they started taking the heads of all the dacoits which were severed, and they started playing football with that. And like this, ghastly scene. And then finally, Shri Krishna, Rukmini, Satyabhama ki jai. And then finally, Kali set free Jadabharata, and then Jadabharata went. So this pastime is described in the 5th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Now, if we look at Jada-Bharata's behavior, when he was, if you compare an actually dull person, when he was captured by the dacoits, moment he got an opportunity, he ran away. Whereas Jada-Bharata was actually a very intelligent person. But when he was taken to be sacrificed, he did not protest. He did not try to run away. He did not try to defend himself in any way. He was not bothered. You see? If a dull person can understand that I am going to be killed, so better I somehow save myself and run away, intelligent man will be even more cautious, no? But you look at the behavior of Jada-Bharata, he was not bothered. He was not disturbed at all. Imagine if any normal person is caught by some dacoits and taken to the forest in front of Kali, what will happen? He will be totally frightened, shaking in his boots, right? But Jada-Bharata completely calm, composed, no matter what happens, no problem. So Prabhupada gives this example of Jada-Bharata as well as Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj also, when he was tortured by his father, he was subjected to all kinds of tribulations. Some of you might have seen Mahavatar Narasimha movie, nicely depicted. Elephants trying to trample, then snakes put into a pit of venomous snakes, then made to sit on Holika's lap and put on the fire, different kinds of things, tribulations. When everything failed, Hiranyakashipu, he called Kayadu and told her, you feed poison to your son. You can imagine, he is telling the mother, you feed poison to your son. So Kayadu was sitting and crying, and Prahlad Maharaj asked his mother, what happened? So she said, what to do? Your father is telling me that I have to feed you poison. So Prahlad Maharaj said, don't worry, you give it to me, I'll drink it. Because if you don't feed me, then he will come and make you drink that. He is such a fellow he is. So don't worry, I'll drink it, you bring it to me. You can imagine. And then Kayadu didn't know what to do. And Prahlad Maharaj took that glass of poison and drank it. Can you imagine, 5-year-old boy. 5-year-old boy, he has that much maturity that, okay, if I don't drink this poison, my father will go and unnecessarily torture my mother. He'll make her drink it. So better I drink it. He drank it. Peacefully, calmly. Not that he was crying and then shivering and afraid, nothing. And although Hiranyakashipu was subjecting Prahlad Maharaj to so much tribulation, Prahlad Maharaj never tried to run away. He was, cool and confident. Whenever his father would call and ask him that what is the best thing, Vishnu, worship of Vishnu. Hitma atmapatam grihamandakupam. You have fallen into a deep, dark well of family life. Hitva gatam, vanamashrayet. You please go to the forest, take sannyas. He is telling his father. 5-year-old child is telling his father, you have fallen into the deep, dark well of family life. You give up this, go to the forest, take sannyas and worship Vishnu. Confident, no problem. He knows his father. Not worried, not afraid at all. So Prabhupada gives these examples. And Prabhupada gave the example similarly in modern day life also. Jesus Christ. He was crucified. You can imagine the amount of pain he must have been going through. The hands, nails are driven through the hands and feet. And then you are put on a cross and then put up there. And you are hanging by the nails which have been driven through your hands and legs. Can you imagine? Excruciating pain. But what was Jesus Christ's response? He is praying to God. Oh Father, they don't know what they are doing. Forgive them. You see? If somebody even pricks us with a pin, what will be our response? All galis will come out of our mouth. We won't remember Krishna and tell Krishna to forgive him and all that. First thing we will pray is, Krishna, punish him. This fellow is pricking me with a pin. But you look at Jesus Christ. So, Prabhupada gives these 3 examples. And Prabhupada quotes a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says Krishna talks about Stitadi, Stita Prajna and Stitadi. Dukkheshu Anudvigna Manaha, Sukeshu Vigata Spraha, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha, Stitadir Muniruchyate, Krishna says. So a Stitadi, one whose intelligence is fixed up, not deviating, not disturbed, one whose intelligence is completely fixed up, calm, collected, peaceful, and one-pointed. What is the characteristic of such a Stitadi Muni or a Stita Prajna Muni? The characteristic is that Dukkheshu Anudvigna Manaha. Mana, his mind, Dukkheshu, even in the midst of the greatest distress, Dukkheshu Anudvigna. So Anudvigna means he is completely undisturbed. He is not bothered. Dukkheshu Anudvigna Manaha. And simultaneously, Sukeshu Vigata Spraha. He is not attached to happiness. Generally in the material world, everybody is trying to achieve a situation where they can be happy and trying to avoid a situation where they will be distressed. This is what everybody is doing. But Krishna is saying, as Stitadi Muni, he is not trying to avoid a painful situation, nor is he trying to achieve a happy situation. He is not interested, he is not attracted by happiness, nor is he disturbed by distress. Either case, whether it is a position of happiness or distress, the Stitadi Muni is completely equitable in both kinds of situations. So, the question comes, why do people become disturbed when there is distress? And they become extremely happy when there is a pleasurable situation. That's a general trend. Everywhere it's a common people, if you see. If there is some distress, they'll become very disturbed. On the other hand, if there is some pleasure, they'll become very happy. They will get carried away and they'll become attached to such a situation that this pleasurable situation should not go from my hand. So why this happens? Because Prabhupada says, as it is mentioned here in today's two verses, the 35th verse said, Nabasaha Shabda Tanmatrat. So this word Tanmatra appears in both verses 35 and 36. Nabasaha Shabda Tanmatrat, and in verse 36, Kapila Deva is stating, Tanmatratvam Nabaswataha. So Nabas, ether, from that, Shabda Tanmatrat evolves the subtle element sound. From subtle element sound, Tanmatrat, Shabda Tanmatrat. From the subtle element sound, Nabasaha, ether, evolves. And Tanmatratvam Nabaswataha. From the subtle form of air, Sparshastya Sparshatvam, touch, the attribute of touch evolves. So, due to the Tanmatra refers to all the objects of sense perception. What are the objects of sense perception? Sound, touch, form, smell, taste. Right? These are the Tanmatras. Shabda is a Tanmatra. Sparsha is a Tanmatra. These are all objects of the sense perception. So due to our coming in touch with the objects of sense perception, due to our coming in touch with the Tanmatras, what happens? We experience happiness and distress in contact with them. That is why Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkha daha agamapaino anityastam stitikshasva bharata. Matra sparshat. Same word, matra. Here, the word tanmatra is used. There, Krishna uses the word matra, which refers to the same tanmatra. Matra sparshastu kaunteya. Krishna is saying, addressing Arjuna as the son of Kunti. And he says, O son of Kunti, matras parshat, by coming in touch with the matras, meaning by coming in touch with the tanmatras, by coming in touch with the objects of sense perception. Matras parshastu kaunteya, shita ushna sukha dukkha daha. Perception of different conditions, sukha and dukkha, of happiness and distress, like heat and cold, shita and ushna. Cold is shita, ushna is heat. So, the perception of distress and happiness arising out of the situations, arising out of coming in touch with the sense objects, like heat and cold, etc., gives rise to perceptions of distress and happiness. Now, if we have to come to a position like that of Jada Bharata, Prahlad Maharaj, Jesus Christ, Prabhupada gives another example, the example of Haridas Thakur, caned in 22 marketplaces, but he was not disturbed at all. So, even in times of extreme adversity, times of extreme pain, you can imagine, Jada Bharata was put into a position where he was going to be decapitated. He was going to be killed. His life was going to go. Prahlad Maharaj also similar situation. He was in a situation where his father somehow or the other wanted to kill him. So even in a situation where you are practically going to be killed, like Haridas Thakur was punished by being beaten, caned in 22 marketplaces. Practically he was to be beaten to death. That was the reality. So even in a situation where you may have to lose your life, even in such a situation, how to remain undisturbed? How do you remain undisturbed? How do you come to that position? That is why Krishna says, Matras pashastu kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama apayano stam stitikshasva bharata. These pains, distresses and happiness, first of all, we have to understand that they are temporary. Agama apayana. It will come and it will go. It will not stay permanently. So, although it may be temporary, somebody may argue, it may be temporary. But at that moment, when I am going to be killed, or I am being crucified, or I am being caned in 22 marketplaces, at that time I have to undergo pain. No. It will be painful. No. It will be distressful. No. Okay. After some time that punishment may be stopped, or I may be rescued, all that may be there. So once that problem is solved, the pain is gone. But that moment when the distress is going on, at that time I will be undergoing so much pain. No. So therefore Krishna says, Tam stitikshasva bharata, learn to tolerate them. These pains arising out of the dualities like heat and cold, as Prabhupada is mentioning in the purport to verse 36. In actuality, objects are perceived in two different ways. They are either soft or hard, cold or hot, etc. So this is a life of duality. This is a world of duality. So the perception of distress and happiness arising out of the dualities, heat and cold, hard and soft, etc. You have to learn to tolerate them. Titikshasva. We have to learn to tolerate. Krishna says in another place in the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma bhutah prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. Krishna says that Brahma bhutah prasannatma na shochati na kankshati. We have to practice to avoid hankering for what we don't have and lamenting for what we have but we have lost. This hankering and lamentation, as long as it is there in us, what will happen? The perceptions of happiness and distress also due to contact with the tanmatras, with the sense objects, will continue. So the method to overcome the perception of happiness and distress in contact with the sense objects is tapasya, austerity. Austerity means voluntarily we undertake some difficulty for the sake of some higher purpose. So, unless we learn to tolerate titiksha and tapasya, these two practices are very much important. Without that, we cannot expect to overcome the perception of happiness and distress due to the contact of the senses with the sense objects. Sparsha, as it is mentioned in today's verse. The Nabasaha Shabda Tanmatrat Kalagatya Vikurvata Sparsho Abhavat Tato Vayus Tvak Sparshasya Chasangraha. Sparsha, the out of contact between the senses and the sense objects, these perceptions of heat and cold, hard and soft, happiness and distress, these things arise. So the only way to overcome this is by practicing tolerance and tapasya or austerity. So the question comes, why should I practice? Why should I practice tolerance and austerity? Why should I overcome these feelings of happiness and distress because of the contact of the senses and the sense objects? So the Srimad-Bhagavatam says, Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahaitukya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. Atma suprasidati. If we want to become completely happy, uninterrupted happiness, if we want to always exist in a state of bliss, happiness, no more distress in our life, then what is required? Savai pumsam paro dharmo. We have to execute the highest dharma, highest religious activity. And what is that highest religious activity? Yato bhaktir adhokshaje, by which we will be able to develop devotional service to Krishna. What kind of devotional service to Krishna? The parabhakti, the unmotivated, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. So, by doing that, now, what kind of unalloyed devotional service? Ahaituki, without any motivation, that I want to gain something from this devotional service to Krishna. Nothing to gain in return for executing devotional service. Somebody will go to Ganesha temple, break 108 coconuts. Simply like that, he will not break. He will be breaking coconuts thinking, if I'll break these 108 coconuts, please ensure that I pass in the exam without studying. Right? Something you want in return. That's why you are taking the trouble of breaking 108 coconuts. If Ganesha tells that, no, I will not allow you to pass, then he will never break even one coconut. So, Hetu, there is some cause because of which people in the material world approach and worship the different devatas. So, but then devotional service to Krishna has to be ahaituki, nothing for me to gain. And simultaneously, ahaituki, apratihata. Under no circumstances should that devotional service be stopped. That means you take the example of Jadabharata, or you take the example of Prahlad Maharaj, or you take the example of Haridas Thakur. None of them stopped their devotional service even in the midst of such great adversity. They were faced with death, but still they did not stop their devotional service to Krishna Vasudeva. So that kind of apratihata devotional service has to be performed. So somebody may say, okay, I can perform devotional service, but sometimes if difficulty is there, I may not be able to do devotional service that day. Today little fever, today I will not chant. Tomorrow some other problem came, so I will not go to the temple today. But then the Bhagavatam says, Dharma swanushtita pumsam vishwaksena kathasuyaha notpadiyadiratim shamayevahi kevalam. Simply executing religious life alone will not help. Ultimately, it has to lead to swanushtita pumsaha vishwaksena kathasuyaha notpadiyadiratim. Rati. Attraction for Krishna has to develop. Attraction for the pastimes of Krishna. Attraction for the qualities of Krishna, attraction for the instructions of Krishna given in the Bhagavad Gita. That has to be generated in the heart. The whole purpose of executing different religious activities is to ultimately generate that, to revive that affection and that love for Krishna, and that attraction for Krishna. So if that attraction is not awakened in our heart, then there is no point in following all the different formulas and rituals in the religious principles. So if you have to develop, you have to reawaken your forgotten love for Krishna, that devotional service has to be ahaituki and apratihata. And Krishna says that Brahma bhuta prasannatma nashochiti na kankshati. When we give up hankering for material possessions or sense gratification, and we stop lamenting for some sense gratification which we have lost, then what happens? Brahma bhuta prasannatma nashochiti na kankshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. We will develop para bhakti for Krishna. Para bhakti means unmotivated, unalloyed devotional service to Krishna. So if you want to develop unmotivated, unalloyed love for Krishna, then the only way is that we have to learn to tolerate, and we have to learn to follow austerities in executing devotional service in order to be able to develop that, in order to be able to awaken that forgotten love for Krishna. So, if we want para bhakti for Krishna, and if we want atma suprasidati, if we want to always remain in a situation where we are no longer subjected to any miseries, then the first step is we have to learn how to tolerate, and we have to learn how to undertake austerities with respect to the contacts of the senses and the sense objects. Only then it is possible. As long as we remain attached to the tanmatras, to the sparsha of the tanmatras, to the contact of the senses with the sense objects, we will not be able to practice the principles of penance and austerities, tapasya and titiksha. And until and unless we learn titiksha and tapasya, we cannot expect to develop love for Krishna. So, the description of the different tanmatras and how they are evolving from subtle to gross. The first subtle tanmatra to manifest is sound. And from sound, ether got manifested. And from ether, what happened? The sense of touch, sparsha, came into existence. And from the sense of touch, what happened? Air came into existence. And so like this, one after the other, from the subtle to the gross, from the tanmatras, the objects of the sense perception, from that, the different pancha mahabhutas have formed: earth, water, air, fire, and ether. So, earth, water, fire, and air, and ether have manifested from the subtle tanmatras. From subtle to gross, the things are manifested within the material world. And even the most subtle form of tanmatra, which is sound, is also material. None of them are spiritual. The spirit soul is not present in any of the tanmatras, nor in any of the pancha mahabhutas. So, to demonstrate this point, according to the method of Sankhya Yoga, Kapiladeva is explaining to his mother, Devahuti, how this whole material world is manifested and how this gross world which we see around us has come into existence. And we can see that in none of these elements the soul is there. That means the soul is independent of these tanmatras as well as the pancha mahabhutas. And so therefore the soul is actually not to be affected by the interactions of the tanmatras, sense objects, and the senses. But unfortunately, because we have forgotten Krishna and we have identified ourselves with the body, which is composed of all these senses, the 5 working senses and the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, meant to interact with the objects of the senses, meant to interact with the tanmatras. Because we have identified ourselves with the body, what happens? The moment the senses come in touch with the sense objects, we experience feelings of happiness and distress. And even if we experience some sort of happiness when the senses and sense objects come in touch, Krishna says that yehi sansparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya yevate. See, again, Krishna is using the word samsparshaja bhoga. Out of contact, the feelings of the experience of happiness which we may derive out of the contact of the senses and the sense objects, dukkha yonaya yevate. Ultimately, it will end in distress only. So even if I have a situation where I am experiencing happiness because of the contact of the senses and the sense objects, eventually, at some point of time or the other, adyantavantaha kaunteya, at some point of time or the other, that pleasurable situation will come to an end. So eventually, all experiences of happiness arising out of contact between the senses and the sense objects will eventually end in distress. So therefore, an intelligent person understanding the nature of the tanmatras, nature of the sense objects, that they are all material, not spiritual, and that the living entity is independent of the tanmatras as well as the pancha mahabhutas, and so therefore the living entity has no connection with them. The living entity, the Atma, is not in any way affected by the contact of the senses and the sense objects. We have to understand this, and simultaneously we have to practice tapasya and titiksha. By culturing tapasya and titiksha, what will happen? Brahma bhuta prasannatma nashochite nakangshati samaha sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhatem param. We will attain parabhakti to Krishna. Parabhakti refers to ananya bhakti, or pure devotional service to Krishna. So this is the purpose of Kapila Deva in explaining the whole process of creation and the fundamental principles of material nature to Devahuti, so as to distinguish the soul, spirit soul, from material, from matter, to differentiate the Atma or the soul from the senses and the sense objects, and to be able to equip us to practice a life of austerity and penance and tolerance, so that we can achieve pure devotional service to Krishna, and we can go back to Godhead, and we don't have to take repeated birth and death within this material world and suffer the pangs of birth, death, disease and old age. So I'll stop here. Grantharaj Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Vishwaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.